Welcome to Golden Star Memories. They were once the faces that defined beauty, confidence, and a seemingly timeless allure. To look upon them was to see the very embodiment of the American dream, etched in celluloid and bathed in the soft, forgiving glow of a cinematographer's lens. But fame is a demanding mistress, and the pressure to remain frozen in a state of perpetual youth can change everything. From subtle enhancements whispered about in the darkened corners of vanity trailers to the shocking transformations that left the world gasping, these stars reveal a side of Hollywood that is rarely spoken of in polite society. What happens when perfection ceases to be a natural gift and becomes a relentless, exhausting pursuit? Can anything ever truly replace what time, in its quiet and inevitable march, gently takes away? Consider the story of Tara Reid. Once, she was the quintessential girl next door, a bright and youthful star who captured the collective heart of a generation in the film American Pie. Her playful charm and effortless appeal made her the defining face of early 2000s Hollywood, a symbol of blonde ambition and sun-drenched innocence. Yet, as the years pressed on, the whispers began. Noticeable changes, often linked to the clinical coldness of procedures like breast augmentation, liposuction, and facial fillers, started to draw a different kind of attention. Now at 50, she lives a quieter life, a living reflection of how the heavy machinery of fame can reshape both an appearance and an entire identity over time. She is a reminder that the spotlight does not just illuminate, it can also scorch, leaving behind a silhouette that the public barely recognizes as the girl they once loved. The archives are full of such tales, where the transition from the golden years to the silver screen's shadow is marked by a desperate grab for what used to be. We see it in the eyes of icons like Meg Ryan, the radiant queen of romantic comedies, who lit up the 90s with a smile that felt like a secret shared just with you. Her natural charisma in films like When Harry Met Sally defined an era of romance, yet later appearances sparked a different conversation, one centered on Botox and the artifice of the surgeon's touch. It is a haunting melody played out across decades, where the desire to stay relevant clashes with the biological reality of existence. In this world of high stakes and higher cheekbones, the line between enhancement and erasure is thinner than a film strip, and the cost of crossing it is often paid in the currency of one's own reflection. This story is not just about the women of Tinseltown, but the men who walk the red carpets with a rugged grace that seemed untouchable. We think of the country legends like Kenny Rogers, whose gentle voice and warm smile defined emotional storytelling for millions. Yet, even he would later admit to the quiet tragedy of a facelift that left him feeling like a stranger in his own skin. We see the contrast in the weathering faces of those who chose a different path, like Clint Eastwood, the embodiment of timeless Western grit, whose deep lines tell a story of dignity, rather than a struggle against the clock. As we step into this world of glamour and hidden pain, we begin to uncover a narrative of transformation that is as beautiful as it is devastating. This is the prologue to a saga of those who lived for the lens and those who were eventually lost within it. The stage is set, the lights are dimming, and the secrets of the silver screen are about to be laid bare. To understand the shift from natural grace to the meticulously crafted image, one must look at the golden years of those who once seemed destined for immortality. In the heart of the 1980s, television was the high altar of fame, and Joan Van Ark was one of its most cherished high priestesses. On the sprawling set of Knots Landing, she represented a soft elegance and a timeless beauty that felt both attainable and divine. Her presence was a masterclass in refined screen presence, a delicate balance of vulnerability and strength that kept millions tuned in week after week. But as the seasons turned into years, the quiet ticking of the Hollywood clock grew louder. The first difficulties often arrived not as a loss of talent, but as a perceived loss of light in the eyes or a softening of the jawline. For many, the first step toward the surgeon's chair was not born of vanity but of a professional necessity dictated by a system that valued the bloom of youth over the harvest of experience. Behind the scenes, the intrigues of the industry whispered that a face was a star's primary tool, and any rust on that tool had to be polished away, no matter the cost. This obsession with physical perfection found an even more extreme expression in the high society circles of New York and Europe. Jocelyn Wildenstein, once a refined socialite admired for her striking features and commanding presence in the upper echelons of global society, became perhaps the most haunting example of what happens when the desire to please or to hold on to a certain image spirals into a transformation without end. What began as a journey to maintain a high society facade reportedly evolved into an odyssey of facial reconstruction, implants, and fillers that fascinated and shocked the world in equal measure. Her story was not just about aesthetics, it was a drama of identity, a woman who sought to recreate herself so fundamentally that the original person became a ghost. The line between a personal choice and a clinical obsession blurred, leaving the public to watch from a distance as a once familiar face was replaced by a landscape of surgical ambition. It was a transformation that suggested that in the quest for the ultimate image, the self is often the first thing to be sacrificed. In the fast-paced world of high fashion, where the image is the only currency that matters, Donatella Versace stood as a driving force of a global empire. She once embodied a bold, natural Italian glamour, her sharp features mirroring the cutting-edge designs that bore her family name. But the pressures of leading a dynasty under the unrelenting gaze of the fashion press led to a visible evolution. The introduction of fillers, Botox, and more permanent enhancements became a central part of her narrative, an armor of sorts against the passage of time and the weight of legacy. It was a testament to the fact that even those who command the heights of creative power are not immune to the insecurity that haunts the halls of fame. Her look became as iconic as her silk prints, a shield of modern artifice that spoke of a woman determined to remain relevant in a world that discards the old with brutal efficiency. For others, the path to fame was a whirlwind that began in the innocence of youth, only to be complicated by the very industry that celebrated them. Daniela Westbrook, the fresh-faced darling of the British soap opera EastEnders, captured the 1990s with a natural, lively presence that seemed untouchable. Yet, the behind-the-scenes reality was far from the scripted drama of the screen. As personal struggles and the demands of stardom collided, her journey into cosmetic procedures became a matter of survival and reconstruction. What the public saw as a shocking change in appearance was often a reflection of deeper battles, where fillers and reconstructive surgeries were used to piece back together a life that had been fractured by the intense heat of early fame. Her story serves as a poignant reminder that the face we see on the screen is often a mask, hiding a resilience that the public rarely fully appreciates until the cracks become too wide to ignore. In this landscape of shifting identities, some stars chose to lean into the transformation, turning the pursuit of a new self into a form of performance art. Cher, the time icon, who has defined generations of music and film, has always been refreshingly open about her relationship with the surgeon's knife. From rhinoplasty to the tightening of the skin, she embraced change as a form of reinvention, refusing to be a victim of age. For her, the cosmetic was a tool of control, a way to ensure that the image the world saw was the one she chose to project. Contrast this with the flamboyant Pete Burns, the frontman of Dead or Alive, whose bold look in the 1980s was just the beginning of a lifelong journey through hundreds of procedures. His path was a mixture of fearless individuality and a cautionary tale as he sought a physical ideal that seemed always just out of reach. His story, marked by complications and corrective surgeries, highlighted the dangerous allure of the extreme, proving that once the cycle of transformation begins, it can become a narrative that is impossible to stop, even those who reached the very pinnacle of Hollywood success. Like the radiant Renee Zellweger, found that the spotlight provides no shelter from the scrutiny of the masses. The woman whose expressive eyes and natural charm made her the heart of Bridget Jones's Diary, found herself at the center of a global firestorm in 2014. Her reappearance after a period away from the cameras sparked intense discussion, with every minor change in her features dissected by a public that felt they owned her image. It was a moment that revealed the hidden tension between the star and the audience, the expectation that a woman should age, but only in a way that feels natural and remains pleasing to the eye. The drama of the changing face is in many ways the drama of a society that refuses to look at its own reflection in the aging icons it purports to love. As the golden years fade, the pressure to maintain the illusion of the past creates a psychological landscape where the mirror becomes a battlefield. and the surgeon is the only ally in a war that no one can truly win. While the initial steps toward cosmetic change are often paved with the hope of rejuvenation, there exists a darker, more harrowing corridor in the history of Hollywood where the dream of perfection collided with a devastating reality. This was the turning point for many, the moment the velvet curtains of the industry were drawn tight to hide the scars of a struggle that had gone too far. Behind those closed doors, the scandals were not always about romance or riches, but about the betrayal of the very mirror the stars relied upon. The industry, ever protective of its billion-dollar illusions, often responded with a deafening silence, leaving the idols of the past to navigate their changing reflections in a state of quiet, agonizing exile. Society, too, was a complicit witness, alternating between a morbid fascination and a cold, judgmental distance. When the product they consumed began to look fractured, consider the case of Mickey Rourke, a man who once possessed a rugged, almost ethereal beauty that defined the cinematic intensity of the 1980s. In films like 9½ Weeks, his smouldering gaze made him a global heartthrob. But Rourke was a man of contradictions, and his return to the professional boxing ring in the 90s left his face a canvas of physical trauma. The drama lay in the desperate attempt to reconstruct what the ring had taken away. He sought out the hands of surgeons to mend the damage, but the result was a radical transformation that left him nearly unrecognizable to the audiences who had once swooned at his sight. The industry watched as his leading man status evaporated, replaced by a fascination with his wild new appearance. It was a turning point that saw him transition from a romantic icon to a character actor defined by his scars. A man whose physical journey became a testament to the heavy price of a turbulent life, lived under the spotlight's unforgiving heat. Even more shocking was the sudden disappearance of Linda Evangelista, one of the most iconic supermodels to ever grace a runway. She was the woman who famously wouldn't wake up for less than $10,000 a day, the absolute peak of 1990s glamour. And then she vanished. For 5 long years, the fashion world whispered about her absence, unaware of the hidden drama unfolding in her private life. The turning point came when she finally broke her silence, revealing that a non-invasive cool sculpting procedure had backfired, leading to a rare condition called paradoxical adipose hyperplasia. Instead of reducing fat, the treatment had caused it to grow and harden, leaving her, in her own words, permanently disfigured. The scandal wasn't just the medical complication, but the psychological toll of a beauty icon being forced into hiding by a culture that has no room for imperfection. Her eventual return was an act of immense courage, exposing the risks that even the most elite and safe procedures can carry. The narrative of betrayal took a more sinister turn in the story of Priscilla Presley. Admired for the timeless elegance she maintained throughout her years alongside Elvis, she became the victim of a scandal that sent shockwaves through Beverly Hills. In the mid-2000s, she fell under the influence of a fraudulent practitioner who was injecting high-profile clients with what turned out to be low-grade, industrial-strength silicone, the kind used for automotive parts. The procedures led to lumps, swelling, and permanent facial damage. It was a harrowing revelation of how even the most sophisticated individuals can be preyed upon by those promising the fountain of youth. The industry and the elite circles she inhabited kept the details hushed for years, protecting the reputations of the circles where such doctors operated, while Priscilla was left to deal with the physical and emotional fallout of a trust deeply broken. For Melanie Griffith, the turning point was a gradual realization that had been building for decades. Once known for her magnetic, sun-kissed allure in Working Girl, she found herself caught in the cycle of fillers and facelifts that many in Hollywood felt was mandatory for survival. The scandal here was the internal one. The moment she looked in the mirror and realized she didn't recognize herself, prompted by the harsh comments of a public that had watched her features change over the years. Her drama was one of reclamation. She made the brave decision to undergo procedures to reverse what had been done, to dissolve the fillers, and return to a softer, more natural version of her maturing self. It was a rare admission of regret in an industry that usually demands its stars double down on their choices. And it served as a powerful critique of the more is more philosophy of cosmetic enhancement. The tragedy of the turning point also touched the lives of stars like Lara Flynn Boyle and Nikki Cox, both of whom were rising darlings of the screen before their physical transformations became the primary topic of conversation. The studios, sensing a change in the marketability of their features, often grew distant, offering fewer roles as the actresses' looks evolved through Botox and fillers. Behind the scenes, the pressure to maintain a certain level of television-ready beauty led to a spiral where the very efforts to stay relevant were the things that made them outcasts in the industry. The society that had once cheered their arrival began to treat them as cautionary tales, illustrating the brutal reality that in Hollywood, when the mask begins to crack, the audience often looks away. These stories of hidden pain and surgical betrayal reveal the true stakes of the game, where the pursuit of an eternal peak often leads to a valley of isolation and a desperate search for the self that was left behind in the pursuit of perfection. As the sun sets on the silver screen and the golden era recedes into a sepia-toned memory, we are left to weigh the true legacy of those who dared to defy the passage of time. The history of Hollywood is not just written in the roles these icons played, but in the very lines, or lack thereof, upon their faces. We look back at the final years of someone like Joan Rivers, a woman who turned the surgeon's scalpel into a punchline. She was a trailblazer who used her own transformation as a shield and a weapon, proving that humor could be the most effective form of maintenance. When she passed away in 2014 at the age of 81, she left behind a legacy that was as sharp as her wit and as meticulously curated as her appearance. She didn't just change her face, she changed the conversation, making it possible for those who followed to speak openly about the artifice of beauty. Her story reminds us that beneath the layers of Botox and the results of numerous facelifts, there was a woman of singular focus who refused to let the world tell her when her time was up. In stark contrast, we find the enduring dignity of the men who let the years settle upon them like a fine patina on vintage leather. Robert De Niro and Mark Hamill stand as pillars of an alternative philosophy, where every wrinkle is a chapter in a long and storied career. Hamill, forever, our Luke Skywalker, transitioned from the smooth-faced innocence of a farm boy on Tatooine to the weathered, soulful presence of a master who has seen the rise and fall of empires. There is a quiet power in watching these men age. It provides the audience with a sense of continuity, a feeling that while the world changes, some things remain authentically human. This natural evolution has allowed them to step into character roles that require a depth and a gravity that youth simply cannot simulate. Their legacy is one of endurance, proving that the most captivating thing a performer can bring to the screen is the unfiltered truth of their own experience. Yet, the history of transformation also contains stories of profound, quiet tragedy. We remember Jan Michael Vincent, once the golden boy of the 1970s and 80s, whose striking looks were eventually stolen not by a surgeon's hand, but by the relentless toll of health struggles and a life lived on the edge. His final years were spent away from the flashing bulbs of the paparazzi, a shadow of the man who once commanded the skies in Airwolf. His story, much like that of the legendary Marlon Brando, serves as a reminder that the vessel of the body is fragile. Brando, who began as the most beautiful man in cinema, ended his life as a recluse, his physical form having changed so drastically that he became a symbol of the heavy weight of genius. These men did not seek to stay young through science, yet they were still transformed by the world they inhabited, leaving behind legacies that are defined by the raw, often painful reality of the human condition. There are also those who moved through the world of high society and fashion with a sense of radical individuality that defied easy categorization. The Duchess of Alba, a woman of immense tradition and even greater wealth, became a figure of global fascination in her later years. As the most titled aristocrat in the world, her life was one of duty, yet her appearance suggested a spirit that was entirely her own, a complex tapestry of tradition and transformation that puzzled and intrigued the public until her passing at 88. Similarly, icons like Lil' Kim and the late Pete Burns carved out spaces where beauty was not a standard to be met, but a boundary to be pushed. Their mark on history is one of rebellion. They used their bodies as canvases for a kind of self-expression that challenged the very foundations of what society deems acceptable. Even if their choices were met with scrutiny or debate, they succeeded in ensuring that they would never be forgotten. leaving an indelible mark on the visual language of fame. As we conclude this journey through the halls of Golden Star memories, we find that the most enduring icons are often those who balance the desire for perfection with a flicker of their original soul. Whether it is Cher, who at nearly 80 continues to command the stage with a confidence that transcends her many reinventions, or the quiet grace of a retired Bond like Pierce Brosnan, the message is clear. Beauty is a fleeting shadow, but the impact of a life lived with passion is permanent. These stars, with their stories of triumph and their hidden scars, have taught us that the pursuit of youth is a universal human struggle, amplified 1,000 times by the roar of the crowd. We remember them not for the perfection they sought, but for the moments of vulnerability they shared with us. In the end, the most beautiful thing about them was never the facade, but the enduring spirit that refused to be dimmed by the ticking of the clock. They remain our idols, our cautionary tales, and our mirrors, reflecting back to us our own fears and our own timeless dreams. Breaking news. Golden Star Memories 2026 LAT, May 13, 2026. The Price of Perfection. Reinvention and Reality in Tinseltown. It's kind of separated us in a way. Priscilla Presley, 80, opens up about the family fractures following the loss of Lisa Marie as she prepares for her 81st milestone. Live from the Archives, Mickey Rourke, 73. The 912 Weeks icon faces a turbulent spring after a high-profile eviction from his Los Angeles residence. Latest sightings in Beverly Hills reveal a radical dark red hair transformation, signaling a defiant new chapter. +1 CHER 79. Still trending after her unfiltered chows at the 2026 Grammys. The legend, set to turn 80 next week, remains Hollywood's premier symbol of surgical and artistic reinvention. Linda Evangelista, 61. The 90s revival is officially here. Her iconic Bixie silhouette is the defining trend of summer 2026, marking a triumphant return to the fashion zeitgeist after years of quiet recovery. Tara Reid, 50. The early 2000s favorite reflects on a life reshaped by the lens, choosing a quieter path as the industry re-evaluates the American Pie era. The Transformation Index. 2026, Stapleton Movement. Priscilla Presley legacy advocate, reflecting on family and the cost of the look. Mickey Rourke rebel spirit, navigating a housing crisis with a bold new image. Care eternal idol receiving lifetime achievement honors amid industry cows. Linda Evangelista style musere, claiming her throne as the ultimate 90s aesthetic influence. Exportivat of tabletsy note from the desk. In Hollywood, the mask is as significant as the person behind it. Stay with Golden Star Memories as we continue to track the legends who refuse to fade away.